Gangs, why we have them, why they can be necessary, and why they can be the most important tool in the perfect world. So, wrote this book right here, We the Blacks, talks about blacks as a culture, not as a race. So, in the so-called African American culture, the key word in that is African. The key word in African is Lower Asia and Upper Asia, which I'll call China and all this other stuff. So before Europeans divided up the continent of Africa into all the many countries, in the cultural aspect, what we have was called tribes. Tribes are simply, in all cultures, the separation of people based on their philosophy, identity, or lineage, which means two brothers have a major disagreement, they separate, they create families, their families prosper and multiply, and now you have two different tribes that started from the tribe of so-and-so. Flash all the way to modern times, these tribes, as people, we have the need for community, a common unity. We have a desire inside of us that we need to bond with others who identify, go through the same struggles and issues that we do. So when you say gang, what if you just turn it to tribe? If you change your mindset from what the media give you or what gang life is and just say to yourself, tribe, now you kind of get to understand why young people who do not have fathers in the household because of politics and political policies historically come together and say, I need leadership. Young people, that's why they're attracted to these tribes, because they need leadership. They need guidance. They need a way out. Now let's make it a little more drastic. A lot of times we like to judge people's situations because we don't know their story, can't relate to their reality. So there's a young person who lives in a single household with their mother, whose father, her husband, the love of her life, was murdered and gunned down by accident because people who are unorganized in the criminal lifestyle created a casualty. That woman trauma of not knowing how to deal with the loss of the love of her life, to bring in dual income, to do all these different things, in order to find some form of escape, she turned to drugs and alcohol, just like the richest or the wealthiest of white people do. She turned to drugs and alcohol and started abusing it in the process of neglecting her child. And her child's neglect, he's hungry. I don't know if you ever went to your bed hungry, but he's hungry. And that hunger creates anger, and that anger creates the desire for something more. And he's looking at this unified group of people and he's saying, man, they eat, they dress well, they do things, and they make me feel safe where I've never felt safe a day in my life. So yes, he does the twisting of the fingers. He gets beat up to get jumped in. He starts talking the lingo and turns into a so-called YN. He's not a YN. He's not out of control. What he is an African warrior. Because all men are not created equal, but this aggression that he has in his body, he doesn't even understand it. He just knows that it's been in his entire life. His temper tantrums, the way he goes about fulfilling his anger and his anxiety and his frustration is through violence. Because he wasn't afforded a rites of passage. He wasn't told, take this knife, go out into that bush, don't come back until you have a lion's head in your hand. He was never given that. He wasn't given skilled martial arts. He wasn't given training to deal with his aggression. He couldn't afford to participate in organized sports, talking about myself. Couldn't afford to participate in organized sports. So what did he do with his aggression? He learned how to fight, because if you learn how to fight, people don't bother you. You do not become a victim. You can't be sexually molested. You can't be taken advantage of. The little bit that you have to eat can't be taken away from you, because you demonstrate that whatever level of violence y'all want to go to, I'm going to one-up you. So now that creates fear amongst people. And fear is the most effective tool in order to acquire goods. This is why governments have big military and spend billions of dollars on it, because they put fear into the hearts of the others that they're going to exploit, just like a gang. But when you look at these tribes in our urban environments with political policies, you see Trump say, oh, we just wiping that out. Cut. That means jobs are gone. You see Obama smile about it and just say, nah, we're going to change the education of this, and boom, jobs are gone. So you see these poor environments where the factories are gone, things are being sent overseas, people are having hard times, they don't know how to survive, they haven't been given the tools, and they just watching people who have things everywhere, especially with social media. So what you gonna do if you starving every day and walk by a feast? At some point, instead of bending over and begging for something, at some point, you're going to want to be the one that's giving the feast, or you're going to run up in there and take what you want off that feast because you're hungry. So when we look at these gangs, the difference between black gangs and all other historical gangs, let's use the Italian mafioso. They had a homeland to identify with, that if things got critical from their criminal activities, they can go back to their homeland. The difference between those gangs and this gang is that they said we are going to be organized. Our children are going to wear suits. We're going to get all this money that's in the street, because there's a lot of it out there. Millions, billions maybe, that's in the street. And we're going to make sure our children wear suits and grow up and not have to do what we do. It was called organized crime. And the organized crime that goes in your face right now, like the White House and the nepotism, where everybody from the family is going to get rich from me being president, those crimes that get committed right in front of your face, it's easier because the skin is white. You throw on a suit, you go to court, slap on the wrist because everybody knows everybody. But when it's blacks, it's unorganized. So we name it gangs and we vilify it, because the introduction of the word gang was when we, as blacks, had political parties, had young people feeding our community, protecting our community, stopping violence in our community, and handing out street justice. That meant more cops couldn't get employed, and that meant older white men who had kids that wasn't going to be nothing wouldn't have a job. So they threw them into the police force and said, no, we can't have other people policing communities. We keep getting tricked out of turning our back on our youth because we don't understand them. So the next time you want to know why your kids are saying gang, gang, and now rich, wealthy whites that have no understanding of urban culture or hunger is saying gang, gang, it's because the human has the need to always be locked in with a common unity, which is a community. And if he's a black boy and he has that African blood running all through him, he's a young warrior. And warrior is like war. But he doesn't understand how to get rid of that aggression, because he's not on the football field, he's not on the basketball field, or he hasn't been trained or taught by somebody that says, let me show you what to do with it. I have the answer. It's going to cost a couple $1 billion because that's what we worth, even more than that. But the next time you hear gang, instead of condemning it, instead of saying lock them all up, understand they just a tribe that's trying to survive.